Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fil-Am Creative's Voices. This is our mega podcast
of voices.
Yes, and we are your hosts. I'm Walter, and this is Arlene.
Howdy.
We are going to celebrate the Filipino American entries into the LA Asian Pacific Film Festival. So that's why we are having this mega podcast. It's gonna be an awesome show. Well, before we get to our guest, how are you?
I am fabulous. I'm a little tired. There's been lots going on.
It's been busy. It's been a crazy week, I guess.
I saw a picture that you were in Kuwait. Where were you?
Yeah. So we did a shoot for one of our prior guests, Mary Grant. We did it was an advertising spot.
Yep, it was a 30-second commercial, and it is a military-themed one.
Yeah, it was a military theme, so we got into all these military gear. It looked pretty legit. We took a picture, and then I put it on my Facebook, and I put, back in Kuwait, guys, and I actually got
the comments are like, be safe. I was like, what the heck?
I mean, it looked legit because of the setting and the set designer.
Oh my gosh.
He did such a
Eric
great job.
Is an amazing
Shout out to Eric. You did a great work, sir. Yeah, I mean, even the MWR, I really like the...
Right? It's legit signs.
You guys didn't know what he was going to pull out, huh?
We kind of discussed it a little bit, and then he had showed me what he wanted to print, but then I actually was able to get a lot of the recruiting posters and all of that through a very good friend of mine.
Oh, okay.
Who happened to help save some people on the 405 recently. And
that was him,
yeah. Those are my folks. So
yeah, that was pretty awesome. That was a crazy accident for anyone who watches the news. But anyways, let's not talk about yeah, I've been traveling. You were traveling. You were in Texas?
I was in Texas. I'm going back in a little bit. And so cool. Taking care of some family stuff out there, trying to sell a house and just visit folks. And
dang. I mean, hey, you got to go back home sometimes. You got to do what you got to do. Take care of family.
And how was Kentucky?
Kentucky was great.
What, where did you eat? That's what I'm wondering.
Man, Kentucky, I was eating in a lot of places. I ate so much ribs and just barbecue. Honestly, I was trying to find my way to a Kentucky Fried Chicken, but I never did. I ended up going to a lot of rib shacks, and I'm not being sponsored by these guys. I just really appreciate them. Mark's Feed Store, again, they're not sponsoring it. I just like going there. I love ribs, pork ribs. I mean, I went to several different places, but man,
I went to a place in Texas too.
Oh, which one?
Rudy's.
Oh,
Rudy's Barbecue is one of my favorite spots in San Antonio.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's so good.
I
Brisket.
mean, yeah, and I mean, I think it's my Filipino background, my just my background with food. I just love, and ribs is just a delicious piece. Yeah. I don't know why. Have me choose between a steak and pork ribs. I'm gonna go with ribs every time.
Oh man, I don't know.
I know.
I'm a steak kind of chick. You can take me to a steakhouse any day.
Pork ribs, man. It's especially even in ribs in sinigang.
Yeah, that's really good.
So for those of you who don't know, sinigang is this Filipino traditional stew. Different one in every region of the Philippines, but for me, pork ribs is the thing.
How many Filipino restaurants do you think there are in LA?
Ooh, do you actually know the answer to this?
No, I
okay, I was like, maybe our guest later will know, so we'll ask her.
Trivia.
I will say 63.
Oh, that's a lot.
Yeah.
In San Antonio, growing up there, I think there were 4.
Mm-hmm.
And that's including bakery restaurants, right? And a lot of my friends, their parents were owners of Filipino restaurants. And so, yeah, it's kind of nice to come to LA where you have so many more options and different types of takes on Filipino food in different regions of the Philippines. So
that's interesting. Yeah. Can I actually, you tell me that story? It's reminded me of when I was in Kentucky. I was driving around with one of my friends, and we drove past this store. It's this shop, and it said Oriental Market. And it was really orientalized. I guess I don't know if that's the word, but like they really like dressed it up
like
and
like architecture.
Well, they just like drew like fake pagodas, and then like when they put Oriental Market, it is in that like English, but in like faking a faux Oriental script or Asian script, like that kind of thing.
Yes.
So I was like, what? And then next to it was like a Filipino flag. I was like, that's a Filipino-owned market. I think it's a Filipino market.
For those who have not been to Kentucky, it is not an overpopulated place of Filipinos.
Yeah.
Maybe Asians too. Is that safe to say?
I was a rarity. Yeah, like when I walked into the bars, everyone looked at me and my friends, and we kind of brought the diversity. And like,
which is awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was like the crew I was running with over there, like, you know, there were 6 of us, three white folks. One of them was a female, and then one Hispanic guy, one black guy, and then just me representing the Asians.
There you go.
And like they would stop and stare at us like, he's like, it's almost like that in the movies, like the record skips. That's how I felt. And even a few places, even like the white folks that was with us was just like, ooh, this is not a good place. They felt like
it's just a different feel.
Yeah.
It's like in LA, Walter Talon's bald Filipino dude is like a dime a dozen.
It's true. It's true.
Right? Like sometimes, like I feel like I should just like go bald, and then we could be more matchy.
I actually, yes, I think
right?
that is the next level.
We should have done that with AJ. Then we could have had the 3 of us.
All 3 been bald. That would have been awesome. Let's invite AJ. Rodney, can we invite AJ again so she can shave her head?
I'm down.
All right.
Hair
awesome.
grows back, guys.
Hey. Whatchamacallit? So I'm really looking for, I mean, now that we were talking about food, like I'm really excited to get our first guest. You know, it's Ali. She's the director for Ulam, this awesome
Alexandra Cuerdo.
Say that again?
Alexandra.
No, the last name.
Cuerdo. Did I say that
Roll that R.
Cuerdo.
So, yeah, she's going to be our first guest. And then later on, we're going to have Jeremy. I don't know if I'm going to say Sistoso.
Jeremy Sistoso.
Let me make that really like Filipino. Sistoso.
There you go. Yes.
And then later on, we're going to have Cath Gulick.
Yes.
I hope I'm saying your name right, Kathy.
Forgive us.
I think she goes by Cath. I'm not sure. I'll ask her when she gets here.
Yes.
So again, it's an awesome show. We're just celebrating the Filipino Americans that, you know, we're celebrating some of the Filipino Americans that got their films and projects into the LA Asian Pacific Film Festival. And this is awesome. So we're looking forward to meeting with them. So we're going to have a word from our sponsors. And when we come back, we will have Ali from Ulam.
Today's episode brought to you by the good folks at Filipino Worker Center. From the heart of historic Filipino town, PWC focuses on providing programs that help meet the immediate needs of workers and their families, while at the same time building their leadership to take collective action for long-lasting change.
Why hasn't Filipino food exploded?
Everyone told me I couldn't do it. From the beginning.
Where does Filipino fit in this conversation? Where do I fit in this conversation? Do you even know what a Filipino represents or what we're about?
And he was an advisor, and he looked at all of us and said, technically, you guys should fail. You should not exist. You're friends, family, relatives, in relationships. You have no money. You're people of color. In the food industry, trying to do Filipino food.
My mother said, do not come home.
My mom was like, you can't do that. I was like, watch me.
If I could do fine dining, I can make a sandwich, so I made a sandwich. The first thing you learn as a Filipino American kid is to make eggs. And so it just made sense to do egg slut. And next thing you know, like everyone wanted to talk to me.
It was remarkable, and it wound up being like a 3-hour wait for a table, and then a 2-month wait for a reservation after week 3 or 4.
We quit our jobs to work 3 days a week, to make money 3 days a week.
But then for us to be able to fill each night out, that was a success.
Now it's beyond opening a restaurant. It's how do we sustain? Everyone wants and craves success, but once you get success, what do you do next? How do you pay it forward? How do you make it last forever?
I think the timing is ideal. There's a lot of publicity proclaiming this is the next big thing.
I think the impact of Filipino food becoming popular is just almost justifying our culture. In order for us to like be accepted and not be considered third world minority, our food has to speak volumes.
And welcome back to Voices. This is our mega podcast.
Mega.
Thank you. And we are back with the filmmakers of Ulam. And we have a surprise guest along with Alexandra Cuerdo. Just kidding. We have her father, Reynaldo Cuerdo.
We should always say our names like that.
I think when you just introduce your dad as that, like Reynaldo Cuerdo.
Yeah, it's so prestigious, you know?
Like Zorro.
Yeah.
or some Spanish soccer player. You know,
yeah.
right?
I'm thinking, as I was saying that, I was actually thinking of Princess Bride. Like,
yes.
Prepare to die. So before we go on a tangent, welcome to Voices, guys.
Thanks for having us.
You guys are on a roll right now. You're doing great with this, with your documentary Ulam.
I know, being the director, the writer, producer as well.
You
Knock
know?
on wood, yeah. Seriously.
Doing the most.
Literally.
So tell us, tell the audience about the premise. What is Ulam?
So Ulam is a Filipino food documentary, which, as you all know here, it's about Filipino food. For those who have not tried it, it is, I think, the hottest cuisine right now in the United States. We have more restaurants opening up than ever. We have all of this great press from mainstream media, New York Times, LA Times, Vogue, you name it. And beyond that, it's our culture's food. You know, it's delicious. It's food that's always been good. And so we're talking in the documentary about restaurants that are crossing over in LA and New York, and kind of pushing our food into the mainstream.
Yeah, awesome. Because it might be the hottest food now, but it's been the hottest food since I was a kid. You know,
it's been the hottest food.
It's been there forever
since Lola made it.
Yeah. Since my parents made it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So yeah, tell us about how what was actually difficult about, and has this ever been done? And if it hasn't, why not?
It's a really good question. So we started this process about 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. It was a dream at the time. We were talking about it over Thanksgiving dinner, right?
Right. One of my closest friends, we've been throwing around the idea of doing a Filipino food documentary, but we never got around to it for whatever reason. It never happened, and so at this particular Thanksgiving dinner, we said, well, whatever happened to that idea? And then Allie just blurts out, why not? I'll do it. And that's how it all started.
Right.
Nice.
So I kind of took this idea and ran with it. And my question was, why hasn't Filipino food crossed over till now? Mm-hmm. You know, I've been eating it my whole life. I've been going to point joints, you know, and I love those places, but I'd never really seen what I would consider to be a mainstream Filipino restaurant, mm-hmm. meaning catering not specifically to the Filipino American community, mm-hmm. but catering to everybody, and in a place that was like a high traffic place, a high rent place. You know, that was really important. And so, you know, it was just interesting to sort of like start looking at that and being like, why is it? Why haven't we crossed over?
And that's so fascinating because you were born and raised in Southern California, correct?
Yes.
In what part of Southern California?
Orange County.
Orange County.
Orange
Excellent.
County.
Where there's a huge Filipino population. Mm-hmm. And because both of us have traveled extensively throughout the world. I've lived all over the United States. I've actually lived in more places with less Filipino populations. This is the first time I've ever lived with a large amount of Filipinos. And every place I've lived in, there's always been like a few Filipino restaurants here and there. And it's kind of true, you know, it's always like the same community that kind of rolls through. San Antonio is a little bit different because we have a large military presence there. So a lot of people are very familiar with Filipino food as well. But yeah, it's interesting. In a place like LA, in Southern California, where you have so many Filipinos, why hasn't it made it to mainstream?
I mean, I grew up in San Francisco, and like you said, there's a lot of turo joints.
Daly City.
Yeah.
And
represent.
But for fancy fine dining Filipino restaurants, you know, there really wasn't much. I mean, when you go to Philippines, they, you know, of course they have them. They have really nice decor, blah, blah, blah. But not here. And it's amazing, like, how it has started. Like, there is a movement. Like, I'm gonna leave it to you guys as the experts, and from your research, like, who would you say was the first one that kind of like started that whole fine dining movement?
It's a really great question. I think it's different for every city, and I can't speak for the entire history of Filipino food. That was something that we had always wanted to say, was that Ulam is not a Bible on Filipino food. There's no way to do that in an hour and 20 minutes, you know, because we would just have to do a whole series, you know. But for us, it was like an introduction. I mean, hey-o.
We just started the idea. You gonna do it?
I would love to.
Well, we're willing to do cameos and be food tasters.
Exactly, right?
We'll be in the background.
And we're saying Ulam too, baon, you know? But, you know, so...
I'll be the stunt man.
Right? Exactly. Yeah, you do all your own stunts.
I'll write it in your contract.
Right? I'm like, wait, what was the question? So, I mean, in our documentary, I would say the OGs in LA were really like somebody like Chef Andre Guerrero, who started cooking as a Filipino chef, you know, and being very public about being Filipino, even though he was cooking kind of, I would say, more American food or more French food. He would always introduce things onto the menu, like lumpia, or he had his famous ube shake at the Oyster, you know. And so that was something that I think LA mainstream dining hadn't really seen before. And so he was really representing, and he was also at the same time mentoring other, you know, restaurants, which I thought was amazing. Like, you know, we were actually introduced to Chef Andre through the Park's Finest, you know, through John Eric.
I was just there last night, actually.
Yeah, I'm always there in my spirit.
Oh, I felt it. I felt it. I was like, oh, Alexandra's right next to me.
Right. And, you know, so that's so cool to see, because in a world in which we really lack Filipino representation in the media, it's amazing when you see people like open to being mentors, you know, so that was really cool. And then in New York, I would say the OGs were Chef Romy, you know, and Amy from Purple Yam, formerly of Cendrillon. You know, they had Cendrillon in Soho for 13 years, you know, way before anybody was even talking about Filipino food, you know, and that was amazing. So we really wanted to have that perspective in the documentary of not just places that have come up in the last 5 years, but people that have been cooking for 20, 30 years and more.
I have a question for you, Ray. Ulam back home in the Philippines compared to how ulam is prepared here, do you feel like there is a big difference? Do you feel like they're pretty similar? What's your take on that?
Well, it's always like who is cooking and from what part of the country that cook is from. Because again, it's all about authenticity, right? Like, you know, we have sinigang, we have adobo, and every region in the country cooks sinigang and adobo, but differently. So again, it's about your origins and you know, and it ends up becoming your palate, or what you taste, what you grew up with, which kind of adobo or which kind of sinigang. But I would say for me, after immigrating to the U.S., it all became my wife's cooking. It became about my wife's cooking.
Good answer, sir.
Good answer. So
I am learning from you.
A smart man right here.
So the short answer is, of course, it's my wife's cooking.
Naks naman.
And Alexandra, have you picked up your mom's skills in in the kitchen and
I would
other
hope.
relatives?
I mean, I love cooking. I'm not a chef. I've never worked in food service, but I do love cooking every day. It's like a personal passion. So for me, that was kind of my entry point into understanding my own culture as a Filipino American. You know, I grew up in Orange County, which does have a large Filipino population, but in the school that I went to, I was one of 3 Asians in my whole class. You know, so it was an interesting experience to grow up not really seeing myself represented, you know, around me, and then only having Filipino food or mostly having Filipino food at home and not being able to say, hey, like, let's go to prom, and before prom, go to this Filipino restaurant. You know, it was something that, like, all of my friends, even, you know, my Asian friends would go to the nicest Italian restaurant or the nicest French restaurant. And that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. But it feels so good now to know that restaurants like LAAPFF exist, and which are, in my mind, perfect date night restaurants, you know, perfect quote unquote fancy restaurants, even though there aren't any white tablecloths, you know, and it's really not that fancy and it's really not that expensive. But for us, right, for Filipino food, it's pretty fancy, you know, and it's cool, I think, because now I feel like a whole new generation of kids can grow up and go to these restaurants and be proud of them and take their friends that are not Filipino.
Even if it's not as fancy as some place, but if the food is delicious, I think your date will just be like, that was great.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's happening at LAAPFF. They were just voted the #1.
Yeah, they were voted on Food and Wine's best restaurants of the year for the United States.
Wow.
Congratulations, guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Much props.
Really mad props. I mean, and that's amazing because at that point you're looking at this list of 10 restaurants and it's the one Filipino place, you know, which is incredible.
I'm now picturing like kids in New York, during prom, and then they're like going to what's the name of the one, Kamayan, or the one that
Jeepney and Maharlika. Yeah.
Let's go there, and like they're all in the prom.
I mean, that's like the most epic prom, though.
If I was a teenager, I'd just set everyone up just to like, let's go here, and then force them to eat by their hand. So they're dancing with each other, like. Actually, if I was the father, I'd be like, yes, all you kids, my treat. So they're all dancing like this.
Walter's strategy, guys.
No love tonight, boys.
Oh my gosh.
No comments.
We're going to deep end, Ray. We're gonna go
I told you we'd follow you.
You're towing the clip. You're towing it already, dude.
I'm all food-wise, like for you, I'll ask both of you. Like, I'll start with you, Ray. Like, who was your food influence growing up? Before your wife, of course.
Wow. I really did not have any sort of like, one or any type of, again, even before, I was never really aware of any such sort of chef superstar in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Growing up in the Philippines.
But I mean, you grew up on a pineapple farm.
Right.
Which is pretty cool.
So
I
again,
think.
my field of experience at the time were all, we lived in very much an agricultural area of the country. So it was all about natural fruits and vegetables.
Nice.
And
which the locals, the people here now, they would call organic.
Yep.
Right.
But I mean, the best pineapples I've had were from Del Monte, which are
my dad worked for Del Monte.
Oh wow,
nice.
In Bukidnon in Mindanao.
So
that was
fresh right off.
Yeah, it was all fresh. All our food.
See, that's why Filipinos live forever, guys.
I say Asian don't raisin.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I mean, like, Walter's like 55.
I tell people 52.
Yo.
What?
True story.
Everyone here is 20, right?
I do have a family question. So I'm going to start with you, Ray. When Alexandra was born, and because every parent does this, right? and for the parents out there, I know every single one of you have done this. You imagine your child growing up and what they will be and who they will become. What did you think that Alexandra, as a 3-year-old, what did you imagine that she would grow up to be?
Never thought she would become a filmmaker.
Yeah, it wasn't that. What did you think?
I thought she actually would be more like an author.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
wow.
because she loved to read.
Wow.
She loved to read books. Actually, so she was just a bookworm all the way through and through. From
True story.
Wow.
I read the library.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That's why I thought maybe she would be a writer, an author, but not a filmmaker.
Wow. And so growing up, what did you want to be?
I wanted to be a rock journalist.
Oh my God, how cool.
I wanted to write for Rolling Stone.
Nice.
I wanted to just, interview bands and go to shows, and that was me. I wanted to be Cameron Crowe in Almost Famous. Yeah. Well, before I saw that, actually, I was always really into music. Not to continue bragging about my dad, but he used to be in a band. And so I would fall asleep as a kid listening to them practice.
That's awesome.
So I basically fell asleep to hard rock. And so, all of my experiences growing up were going with my family to shows. So my dad took me to see the Rolling Stones when I was 18.
That's awesome.
My first concert ever, I think I was 3, and we saw Ringo Starr. So in college, as a family, we went to see Fleetwood Mac. So we, really grew up with music, and that was a really big inspiration for me. So I went to college thinking I was going to be a music journalist and that was the thing to do. And as I started writing, I realized I really also liked directing because I started at UC San Diego for the theater program. I was doing theater directing at the time. And I was like, wait, I'm directing a lot and I'm writing a lot. So what does this mean? And everybody was like, you should go into film. And so I applied to a bunch of film schools, ended up choosing UCLA, and transferred in from there for directing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes, so I'm glad you mentioned that because we do have a guitar.
Reunion.
We already have microphones.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Let's sing all Beatles songs.
Yesterday.
Can we harmonize?
What did you think when she said, "I'm gonna be a film student"?
Well, at the point when she said that, it totally just all made sense because, I'd seen what she was already getting into at San Diego, and when she decided to do that, plus I am still in the film business. I've been in the film business now for 30 plus years. So I'm thinking it may have by osmosis, just rubbed off because I never encouraged her or anything like that. In fact, if ever, I discouraged her.
True,
really?
True story. Don't do it; it's too difficult.
No,
which is it is
true. I mean, that's
especially being a woman of color, to want to become a director.
Yep.
It's almost impossible.
It's
to
really
break
difficult.
Through, to break
Oh
through.
yeah, and which is an excellent segue to what my next question was. Like, how do you feel being a female and a female director, and not only that, but even a doing a documentary? Like, how does that feel, and just where your the progression right now, and like how the field is like for you?
It's a great question. To be totally honest, a lot of people told me no. That's what it's been the last 8 years working in film. It's been a lot of walking onto film sets as I started out as an assistant director, and walking onto film sets as an assistant director and having people, there was one instance I remember. I was driving my car onto this set and I rolled down the window to ask where to park. And the production assistant says, "Oh, the other PAs park over there." And I was like, actually,
wow.
I'm your boss. So where do I park with the director and the producers? And so it was one of those moments where I was like, cool. So this is definitely how some people would see me and judge me immediately. And it was just an interesting experience to realize that you kind of have to prove yourself again and again to every single person that you meet, that not only can you do your job, but that you know what you're talking about and you can still be a nice person. You know,
because you do it with grace.
Exactly. And so that was a really interesting thing also while making this documentary, because this doc took 3 years, you know. So from the beginning, it was a lot of people asking me, so what are you working on? And I would say, oh, a documentary. And they would say, cool, what is it about? And I would say Filipino food. And you would just see people's eyes glaze over, you know? And obviously it was mostly non-Filipinos that were treating it this way. But now with all of this press, right, flash forward to 3 years later, it's like everybody wants to talk about Filipino food, even non-Filipinos. So that's been a real revelation for me.
And getting this film made, even, like, what would you say was the hardest or most difficult, I guess? Was it like financing, getting a hold of these restaurants and the chefs?
It was everything. I mean, you know, it's hard to make a movie. It's really hard to make a documentary with basically a shoestring budget. You know, it was a lot of me. What I would do is I would work on sets in New York and LA, and then I would save up enough money till I could shoot, and then I would borrow a camera. I would get a lot of equipment donated from friends, and then film with a chef. And it was always around the chef schedules because they're working chefs, right? So it's not like they're actors that can just drop everything for 2 weeks and shoot. So it was a process of like going back to chefs again and again. When are you available? Are you available? Each chef had to be pitched individually on the idea because we weren't with a major network. You know, it's not like we're Food Network and we're knocking on your door and then, you know, we get all the access. It's just us. You know, it was, you know, my dad, me, and my cinematographer, John, who is based in New York. And John is also one of the producers of the film. And it was just working for free. You know, that was something that, you know, we got a lot of labor donated. We got a lot of equipment donated, you know, so we've been using our networks that we've been building for the last 8 years. And, you know, for my dad, the last 30 plus years, for John, the last, you know, 13 plus years. So it was a real labor of love.
Does New York have a Filipino American, like film community that you were able to use as a resource?
That's a good question. I don't know of one. If there is one, like, I want to be a part of it.
New York, tell us.
Hit me
tell
up.
us where you're at.
We'll have to do a Fil-Am Creative East.
Fil-Am Creative, New York.
Right.
There you
I
go,
would
Walter.
love that. I would love that.
Start one.
It's like how, you know, Avengers, there's Avengers East Coast and then Avengers West Coast for all you comic nerds out there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, shout out, like, please, come help us out on the next one, you know?
Hey,
but actually, John, the cinematographer, is also Filipino.
Excellent.
And we actually met on set because him and me and I think one other person were the only 3 Filipinos on the whole film set. And so that's how we met, actually, was on a film set. His boss at the time was one of my film school heroes, Matthew Libatique, who is Filipino and did the cinematography for Black Swan, Iron Man, many, many films. And so John was working for him. I was working for George Clooney, who was my boss at the time because I was, you know, the actor's assistant on set. And John actually saw me immediately and he was like, another Filipino. And then, of course, he pulls out Siopao.
Nice.
And then from that moment on, I was like, we're going to be friends. So we bonded over food and, you know, and then he introduced me to his boss and I freaked out, almost died, you know, it was amazing. And so it was one of those things where it was like, that to me was like the Filipino American network in New York, was just this person-to-person connection of being like, hey, there's not a lot of us and we're all working like on these big shows, like, let's help each other out.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, and what's even better is the fact that John, right? He just carries around these shilpaos.
I know.
Case he runs into a
like he didn't even start with like a hoy. Yeah. Like none of that. It was just like
oh yeah.
John, you got game.
Yeah,
man.
if John was here,
we need to step it up, Walter. We need to have bigger pockets. I like Lumpia too. Hey.
Ray is a producer for Lumpia too.
Well, there you go.
Is that word on the street? Word on the street. I might see you on
That's
set
coming.
somewhere.
That's coming.
But I mean, that was something that we wanted to talk about in the movie too. Is like Filipinos, we should all help each other out. You know, like we really want to discuss like there is that crab mentality that I think is like from the older generation, and we want to fight that. You know, we want to get rid of that because at the end of the day, it's like us against the world.
And I do think there is a shift. I feel like that generational shift is really it's dissipating now. And
I believe it too. I see
because
it
we're
too.
seeing it across. I mean, like because there's Filipinos in all the major studios at like super high positions of power and influence, and even within Fil-Am Creative. I mean, like so much has happened in over the past, I want to say like 2 years. And now everybody's just collaborating and getting things done, and
and
it's
I mean,
amazing. It's a great feeling.
Yeah, and that's the concept of Fil-Am Creative when we started even growing, and it used to be Fan, and then became Fil-Am Creative. It's just putting together all the brain power and talent and creativity of Filipino Americans in this area, and slowly we're attracting more people from other cities, and if possible, like it would be great to go national someday, like but the hub of entertainment right now is either New York or LA,
Right.
so
Right.
maybe we'll get some more in New York someday.
Or we'll just keep flying out.
We'll just keep
we'll road trip it
There you
all
go.
the way.
Take
3
it
days.
on the road.
3 days, we'll make it there.
And this one's for you, Ray, as producer for the documentary. Like, how was that for you? Like raising money or even like balancing the budget? What was that like on that end?
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. It was all about allocating the funds. It's a good thing that it did last the way it did over a 3-year period, because then it was almost like we were making the movie on an installment basis, you know, and it sort of just worked out that, the money was able to last for 3 years because we were kind of doing it on, and we did not have all the money to begin with, but because of the way it got shot and got produced, we would get money from time to time. You know what I'm saying? Again, because you would slowly, being able to get what we needed for that particular time. Yes.
I guess because I mean, for people watching, like, who wants to do documentaries, like, what kind of advice would you guys have for them from, it's up to you if you want to give them advice about like fundraising, like trying to find funding, and then actually, and maybe you can talk about like actually shooting. Like, what would you do different, or how would you?
The sort of traditional, or if you want to call it standard way of funding documentary films, are usually done through grants. So if we were to advise someone who would want to start doing a documentary film, check out all the grants and funds that are available. We have the internet now, just Google search it. Most of film festivals have documentary film funds, because they are film festivals are actually actively promoting documentary films, because it is one area of the filmmaking, the artistry of filmmaking it's the one that always gets left behind, because there's a lot of documentary films. The topics are non-commercial, so therefore, but they're very important topics, and so the film festival community actively promotes documentary filmmakers to continue to do their art, and that's why they have these film funds. I can mention a couple in San Francisco. Cam Fest has a film fund.
That's right.
And even San Francisco International Film Festival has a film fund
nice.
for documentary filmmakers, for documentary films.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and then Sundance has one. A lot of the major film festivals have grants. Yeah.
I would say like that is definitely one route. That's not really the route we took, because I felt that it was such a topical concept. Like I thought it's funny actually, because I thought this documentary would be old news. I worried that it would be old news because I thought Filipino food was already crossing over 3 years ago, which is why I started doing this, you know. What I'm realizing is that it takes the mainstream a long time to catch up to what a lot of us have known already and what a lot of us, you know, have known for our whole lives. So what I would say for any documentarian or young filmmaker coming out, if you have an idea and you have a way to start shooting it, just go for it. You know, like don't wait, because, you know, right now Ulam is the first documentary feature, and I think the only documentary feature on Filipino food, and that's because we started this process 3 years ago. You know, if we had had all the money up front, this movie could have been done, I think, within a year. But you know, that said, it worked out that it was done over the course of 3 years because we were able to follow the movement as a whole, you know, so that was cool.
Yeah, which is kind of amazing that it, you know, it is the first. Like you would think like Food Network or some of the other big shows or whatever would have done it, especially when, you know, Anthony Bourdain talks about Filipino food so much, you know, and he loves it, and, you know, still crickets, you know. It's like, and then
I mean, we've been hearing that Filipino food has been crossing over for the last like 7 years, right? Like I feel like I see an article every few years like it's Filipino food's time, and it's like,
I mean, and then, you know, like what's the name of the guy who does the food challenges, Strange Foods?
Andrew Zimmer.
Yeah. So, you know, even he was like, he loved Filipino food, you know, and but like, really, you guys still don't want to do a whole segment or, you know, a series on Filipino food?
Yeah, there have been a lot of short series, you know, but nobody's ever been like, well, this is a topic worth discussing for like 80 minutes, you know.
And, you know, get to meet like the chefs and the people making the food in the restaurants happen. I mean, you know, one of the top presidential chefs, you know, is Filipino. And
Chris
Comerford.
Right.
And, you know, and the president loved Filipino food. Not the current president.
We don't know what he likes.
Yeah, the previous president.
The previous.
And to me, it's like, yes, like Filipino food has been such a popular thing. Like, I had no doubt it's gonna be good. But me personally, I think the problem is, or always have been the problem of crossing over, was the fact that I feel like homemade Filipino food is just so much better than the traditional fast food. Like, it's hard to make it.
You can't make
fast
it quick.
food or it's almost like fine dining. Like, if you really want to make it good, it's like Chinese food. It can be great fine dining, but it can also taste great fast, right? Or same with Japanese food. But I feel like that's the boundary, or that's the hurdle that Filipino food kind of has to go through, because it's hard to get really good like homemade Filipino food in a restaurant setting or in a fast food setting. I mean, what do you guys think?
Well,
I mean, I think it just depends what you're looking for. You know, the thing that I've realized, like, while making this documentary, is there are so many more Filipino restaurants than I even realized. Like, I think we interviewed 13 chefs for this, and like in the process of making the movie, we could have interviewed so many more, you know, in just New York and LA. And then as we were researching and discovering, we're like, gosh, there's so much in San Diego, there's so much in San Francisco. There's so much like in Chicago, you know, like all over. And you know, we just didn't have the money you know, to go to all these cities.
What's the most surprising food item that you've seen throughout all of these different Filipino restaurants that you guys saw?
Surprising
like
how?
Surprising meal on the menu, or was everything kind of
uniform?
Something that we've seen before, right?
Right.
Right. I mean, Lhasa. You know, I just gotta say it. Lhasa is amazing. Their food. I mean, they had like a condensed milk ice cream. I remember that we had that just blew us away. They had these. They have this like bagoong XO sauce that they put
Wow.
on like they put on Brussels sprouts.
Oh my God.
I mean, like stuff that I've never even thought like what, you know
Would
what
go
I mean?
together. Yeah, that's
and the
that's
takes
neat.
that they have on traditional dishes like lumpiang sariwa. They have a
so
very
good.
different. They have a very unique way
shit.
of doing
Mhm.
of presenting it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it's stuff like that like the restaurants that use Filipino ingredients but make these sort of like new takes on dishes. That
Right.
stuff surprised me a
Yeah.
lot because I was used to eating, kare-kare,
Right.
you know,
Right.
caldereta, you know,
Yeah.
like just sort of like straight down the line, like I know exactly what to expect. And then I go to a place like Maharlika and I have the kare-kare and it's like different. There's,
Yeah.
they're using these different ingredients. And I think it's cool, honestly. I think it's interesting. Not that I don't love Lola's kare-kare. I mean, Lola's kare-kare will always be the best, right?
And the movie says that is you said what is in the movie.
Oh, okay.
That it's always about your memories
Mm-hmm.
as growing up and eating the food at home.
Mhm.
It's the one hurdle that and the chefs talk about it, that they observe as one of the reasons why Filipino food has only begun to
Yeah.
break out now, because it's that memory of, oh, my mom cooks this better, my Lola cooks this better.
Well, I think it's also like the preparation and like the food, because I did growing up, like in college, I worked in food industry. I was a food prep, and I love cooking. It's one of my favorite hobbies. But when I started learning, even some like hard, I think like making dinuguan and making like kare-kare is difficult. Like when I first made it, man, like I burned that peanut butter, man. I didn't realize peanut butter can burn, but it burned. But kare-kare is, I was like, wow, like much respect to my parents and my Lola.
It's
who
like an
makes
all-day thing.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you gotta soften that tripe. You know, it's
a lot of
tough.
patience.
Mhm.
It's a
Yeah.
lot of
It's a lot of art.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like and I can't imagine, industrial commercial assembly line of it, like to prepare all those meats and vegetables and then have them ready to serve like that. It's got to be difficult, and I'm sure the documentary
it's-
kind of shows the difficulties of that. And you talking about lasa, is like, it's amazing that they're doing this fusion and kind of like because I feel like Filipino food is just that. It's like a fusion of like different cultures' foods, right?
I mean,
Because
there's
it is.
so
And it
many
is, yeah.
influences, right?
Yeah.
But it's still uniquely
Filipino.
Pinoy.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
still Filipino, and it's one of those things that we kind of try to define a little bit. Is like, what is Filipino food even, right?
Yeah.
It's like, and it is fusion, but it's not fusion.
So, what have the audiences that have seen the documentary, what has their feedback been for Ulam?
It's been amazing. The response has been overwhelmingly positive to the point that we've been, just blown away. We just came from sold out screenings in San Diego and San Francisco. One of our screenings in San Diego sold out in 4 hours.
Wow.
We just found out. And the city's response has been amazing. So in San Diego, the San Diego Asian Film Festival put together this incredible event. They wanted to do a 300-person Kamayan.
Whoa.
And
wow, that's a lot of people.
With 15 local chefs
15
coming together with one dish each, contributing one dish each to the Kamayan feast.
Oh my goodness.
That is a lot of hand sanitizer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they had gloves for people that, So anyways. But it was amazing. We walked in, and I think from day one, we never even realized that it would be such an amazing response, because we walked in and we see this like huge room at the Natural History Museum in San Diego,
In Balboa Park.
in Balboa Park, beautiful space, and it's just filled with these long tables. I mean, it looked like heaven, but like Filipino heaven, you know what I mean? Like, and on these long tables is just all this, all this amazing food put together by these chefs, many of whom aren't even making Filipino food for their day jobs.
Wow.
So they heard about it through friends, and they were so inspired and came together to put this like once in a lifetime, I would say, event together. And you have Filipinos eating, you have non-Filipinos eating, like just this whole mix. And for us, it was so special to introduce all of these people to Filipino food after seeing the movie, which of course makes you super hungry.
So I can imagine.
That was incredible because we didn't. We did nothing to organize that.
Right.
That was just the
film festival.
We just brought the film. We just brought the film in ourselves.
And to see people get so inspired that they would put something together like that, it was incredible. And San Francisco was, similar. We walked into the festival and ended up getting the support of the Filipino food movement, the Philippine consulate. I mean, it was unreal. We had all the chefs flown up by the festival. Like it was, other people drove up. Some people flew in from New York.
Wow.
Like we had people come to San Francisco from all over the U.S.
We are professional food tasters.
Yeah.
So we need to get on that list.
Exactly. I mean, I
Just let us
remember
know.
at the after party for San Francisco, there was a cake that was shaped like lechon. But it was a cake.
I feel about that.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm expecting lechon.
Yeah.
Well, there was also lechon.
Yeah, that's like deceiving. It's like, the diaper game when you go to baby showers where you have to like guess what it is, and it's usually like mashed up like Reese's Pieces, and like you have to guess it. It's so disgusting. And
I don't know that game actually.
It's mashed peas and
you
like
mix in the wrong one.
the bonus.
Oh no.
I would feel different. I would feel a little uneasy to see a cake that looks like lechon. That's interesting.
But it was so good.
All right, quick questions.
Okay. Yeah.
What is your favorite food, Filipino food, main dish, and Filipino dessert?
Oh, that's a really good one. I mean, I have to say Lola's kare-kare for ulam, because it was my favorite dish growing up. I think there's something really special about kare-kare, probably because it takes such a long time to make. It takes so much skill and so much care. So that for me is my ulam. And then in terms of desserts, I mean, I think it's ube anything. Like I love it. Ube, we had ube shakes growing up. Ube ice cream. Oh my God, I could go on.
Likewise, dessert for me is ube. I've just been a huge fan of ube. But for the main dish, for ulam, I'm pork all the way. Lechon or sisig. Let's do it. Let's get it out right now.
Yeah, we're ready. Yeah, we're ready. The San Migs.
Well, thank you for coming here, and congratulations on all the success of your film.
Thank you.
If you guys can share you have social media that you want people to follow?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find updates on the film and future screenings at ulamthemovie.com. Also, please follow us on Facebook at Ulam the Movie, and on Instagram at Ulam the Movie. You'll see all these cool photos that we have from our travels, touring the film around. And we can also be reached at ulamthemovie@gmail.com in case you guys want to organize a screening. So let us know.
Right. And you do know we have the screening on Sunday, right?
Yes. So we are doing the LA Asian Pacific Film Festival. We're really excited. Right before our film actually is John Eric Concordia's documentary Prison Food, which is going to be amazing. So we're saying make it a double feature. Come to John Eric's at 2, come to Ulam at 4, and then stay for a feast of Filipino food at Cinemerienda, which is right next door to the screening. So we'll be at the Aratani Theater. You can get tickets at the LA Asian Pacific Film Festival, or you can go to ulamthemovie.com /screenings. And all of our tickets will be there as well, because we're also going to go to Camp Fest in San Francisco.
Right, and that's CamFest is on Friday the 11th, May 11th, Friday.
Right, so it's
CamFest.
Sunday, May 6th for LA
LA,
Asian, and
the 11th,
the 11th
Friday.
Yeah.
Up in the Bay.
Yep.
CamFest.
Awesome. Wow. I am really looking forward to seeing your film and like eating the food. Heck, if you guys can go and then there's food every time, just go, guys.
I feel like once you just tell Filipinos that there's gonna be food there, they just all show up.
So get your tickets before it sells out, because I'm sure it's gonna sell out. Again, best of luck to you guys.
Thank you so much.
Not only with LA Asian, but like all the other film festivals.
Yeah, thank you.
I really believe you're gonna get a distributor if you haven't received one yet.
Yes.
I think with all the success, it's
pray with us.
Yes.
Yes.
Pray for us.
Wish you luck.
Yes,
Thank
you got to
you,
keep
thank
making
you.
more. And that
Absolutely.
Ulam
Thank you.
tour,
Ulam too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Professional food tasters, Arlene and Walter.
And then maybe we'll see you if we come. When Lumpia 2 comes out.
That's
and
right,
hopefully,
Lumpia 2.
Let's talk to Patricia about that.
Yeah, okay. Patricio, come out and we'll talk about Lumpia 2. Call me out, man.
The 2018 Los Angeles Asian Pacific Film Festival is a celebration of Asian Pacific films. Along with films and filmmakers we are focusing on in this episode, many amazing Asian and Fil-Am and Filipino films are part of the festival. Films like Mikhail Red's Neo Manila, Anito by Melanie Lim, Prison Food by John Eric Concordia, and many more. Please check out festival.vconline.org for a full list of films.
And welcome back, guys. We are here in our Fil-Am Creative's Voices mega podcast.
Podcast.
Nice. We are here celebrating the Filipino Americans that are being featured at the LA Asian Pacific Film Festival. You're cracking me up right now.
Get it out.
We have Jeremy Sistoso.
Sistoso. Yes.
Sistoso.
Filipino Sistoso.
It's a Filipino name.
Sistoso. Sistoso. Anyways, I just like saying it. Man.
Sistoso.
Sistoso. And he's got a film in LA Asian called Fakepino?
Yeah.
Fakepino. Tell us about it. What's Fakepino about, Jeremy?
Okay. So Fakepino is basically just me. About maybe a year ago, I started getting curious and like exploring my roots and heritage more. And I was like, well, I know a lot about white stuff, so I guess I'll learn more about Filipino stuff. And so I just went to the library and I just got this book by this guy. Well, he's just recently passed away, actually. It's called Big Little Man by Alex Tizon. He was the same Pulitzer Prize winning journalist who wrote the article, My Family's Slave, if you guys remember when that one came out. Yeah, and he has a book called like Big Little Man in Search of My Asian Self. And it was a lot about him growing up as like an Asian man in the US. And so it was just eye-opening for me in a lot of ways, just thinking about the ways that I was similar to that, and most of the ways that I was not at all. Like that wasn't my experience. And so it got to make me think more about like what I am as like a half white, half Filipino person in America. Yep. And also like within us, like there's so many, like there's like Darren Chris, who like people could think is white. There's like me, who everyone thinks is Latino or like something else. And there are some who look like way more Filipino. And so just trying to kind of explore that was like my curiosity. So I just wanted to make a short film in a way that seemed like a digestible story based on some of the experiences I could remember to, I guess, kind of begin the conversation, because I feel like I don't really see it talked about that much.
It's it's almost like an awkward conversation to have with somebody, especially if you're not half, Filipino, half whatever the other half is. And Filipino American, that combination is so common.
Yeah, and it's also really, it was interesting to me too, because like my mind, like some of the thoughts I think about is like, oh, like any issues or problems I might have, it's nothing compared to like what like full Filipinos have to go through or what these people have to go through. And like in certain ways there are so many privileges that I do have, but at the same time it is weird like not fitting in anywhere. Like I look at like, if I'm like with a bunch of Filipinos in like a mirror, like I'll stand out. If a bunch of white people in a mirror, I'll stand out. So it is like a thing, but at the same time, like Filipinos have always felt like my home and like my community, like, and I like the way I was raised too.
Yeah.
I don't know if I should get into it, but like it's like, yeah, there's just like a lot of interesting stuff that I had never really thought about that much until art school was like, you ever thought about this? I was like, no, I guess I haven't.
I mean, so that's cool that they made you explore and think of things that you never even really considered before, right?
Yeah, I mean, and it wasn't even like they're like, do this. It was just kind of like seeing everybody else explore who they were and their identity and kind of coming into their own around me made me think of like, maybe what is that for myself in a way.
Where were you born and raised?
I'm from Fremont, which is just up in the Bay Area, which is like a nice little suburb. And and I was raised like, so I was with my dad and my mom, of course, in the house, but also my grandparents on my mother's side, so my Lola and my Apong. I've lived with them my whole life. So I was like completely raised by them. And then I went to this Filipino church twice a week growing up. So it's like my whole world to me was like, you know, living my Lola, that she's cooking and she's like disciplining me and my grandpa and then like going to church right that. So it felt like my real life was with that, you know? And then, yeah, but then also at the same time, I realized later that I like subconsciously thought of myself as more white and as a more of like a status, like the status quo, even though I identified like personally and socially with Filipinos.
Yeah.
When in acting training, they were like, you're not going to play white roles. I was like shocked at first. I was like, what? Like, what is my life? You know? And like, yeah.
Well, for the people that don't know, can you explain them? Like, what kind of city is Fremont? What's the demographic there mostly?
It's super diverse. It actually has the highest population of Afghans, and there's a lot of Pakis and Indians as well. But it's just like, I had like Asian kids, Black kids, Latino kids all around me growing up all the time. So like race wasn't a big deal at all growing up. And it was only something I really started to think about coming to LA and then going to art school. So yeah, just super accepting place.
Wow. So, I mean, yeah, coming into LA and doing film and you're being an actor and exploring that world, like, I guess it was kind of eye-opening for you that casting-wise, you're being put in a box then, right?
Yeah.
And so what was that realization like, and how do you feel about that?
Man, I'll be super honest too, because like it's been a journey over these past few years. Because when it first happened, when I was first made aware of like, oh, like based on how mixed you are, like I would go to people like, am I white passing to you? Am I white passing to you? And I was hoping that I would be, like that I was white enough, because I was like, my life would be so much easier. And then kind of coming into realizing like that's not going to be the thing. And then coming into like, but I'm glad that's the thing. And I'm disgusted that I wanted to be white passing, you know what I mean? And then like, or like Filipino passing or whatever. And oh man, I guess thinking about it, I don't know what I think about all of it still. Like but I'm not discouraged at all by any of it, because I still really do believe those things of like individually, like we're all so special.
Yeah.
And as long as you just cultivate that and do the work you believe in, then like you'll find where you're supposed to be, like I don't really care if they're not going to cast me in like these small roles as a white guy or whatever.
Did your parents or your family, did they prepare you, I guess, growing up as this, half American, half Filipino kid? Like, were there any kind of discussions that you guys had?
Absolutely not. It's funny to me how much it is part of my life now, because I remember like when I was first getting curious, I went back and I asked both my parents, like if they had ever thought about that. And they're just like, no. Like it really feels like something generationally, or I don't know exactly what it is, but it really seems like they're not aware of the differences in the cultural, social things to the extent that I am.
Yeah. Well, I mean, did your mom immigrate here, or she was born here and she's like...
She's super American, because she came here when she was 5.
Oh, okay.
And like she's the youngest, and she has a lot of older brothers who are like in their teens and stuff like that. It's like, but so she does have some time in the Philippines that she remembers, but it was mostly here. Like she can like completely understand Tagalog when it's being spoken, but she doesn't speak it at all. Yeah.
So she's like the 0.5 generation, and you're the first generation.
Yeah, basically.
I mean, that's gotta be kind of, I mean, that's interesting, because like we don't know, growing up back then, even like during her years, like what it was like to be a young immigrant because Fremont was not that diverse in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, and they were in SF first too.
Yeah, it was very different. I mean, I grew up in the Bay Area, and when I first immigrated here, I came I was in Union City actually.
Oh,
right
nice.
next
Yeah,
door to
yeah.
Fremont.
Tri-City area, man.
Yeah.
Newark.
And my first experience there too, I remember I was friends with like, you know, it's like, oh, you're Filipino, there's Filipino, you guys should be friends, whatever. And it was weird because the first time I ran, like the first Filipino American, he was born in America. We're same age and everything like that. But I came to realize later that he was ashamed, or kind of like ashamed to be associated with me because I was an immigrant. You know, I was a fob. And so, yeah, like, and so one day he just set me aside and he was just like, hey, you know, out of school we're friends, but in school, like, we're not friends. Yeah.
It's cold, man. Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, all these cuss words came out in my, in my head, and I'm like, yeah. And I just kind of just walked away. But like, and it's a very different time back then than it is now. Like, the diversity is now. So, you know, I can't imagine, like, you know, like, maybe that's why your mom, I can't just guess.
I mean,
like,
honestly, as a parent of a child who's basically, you know, basically Jeremy.
Yeah. Prince Vince and I were
Prince Vince.
Soulmates.
Yes. And Vincent is like a true split between me and Andrew. And you know, so I got to see a sneak preview of Fakepino, and it's amazing, by the way. You guys should definitely check it out this week. And it kind of made me realize, as a parent of a half, you know, a hapa kid, if you will, I never really, like, it's like I thought about it, but it's like I didn't really put a lot of thought, like, what is his struggle going to be? Because he kind of, I feel like Prince Vince kind of, he looks more like his American side, or the German, you know, ancestry. But then sometimes I feel like he looks super Filipino, but he looks like literally like half. Like, he looks like split, like the half of us. So, I didn't really know, you know, kind of how to approach that. Like, I don't know if he's going to be really attached to his Filipino side. I mean, of course, I hope for that.
Yeah.
Or, well, I mean, he does have a slight Filipino accent. Watching all that TFC, guys.
Does he really?
Yeah. He says, I love you. I'm poor, mama. I'm poor.
I say that too.
But yeah, so I really can appreciate the film that you made, because it really brings to light a lot of questions of parents who have children in the same boat. I know a lot of half Filipino, half American kids and adults, and there is that kind of like identity crisis of where do I really fit in? And so it's fascinating. And I think you captured it in such a way that it's so funny, you know? And so it's,
thanks,
but
Eileen.
like, there's those moments of, it really just kind of gets your mind working of how do you deal with that? You know, and seeing the different emotions of what it's like, and like, even like the playing it off thing, you know, like as a fresh off the boat immigrant, we were all me and Walter were fobs at one point. Excuse me. We kind of, I feel like we can kind of appreciate that as well, where it's like, where do you fit in? And so I feel like your film really speaks volumes more than just, you know, the half kids out there. It's a lot of people can identify with that.
Oh, thanks, Arlene.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say real quick too. That's something I also realized, like, just like kind of watching a lot of videos when I was kind of researching experiences last year, was just how strange being Filipino American already is, and how, like, especially like, because I know a lot of Filipino Americans feel like there hasn't been a visible culture to the extent of like Chinese Americans or Japanese Americans or Korean Americans, and like I was like, man, that's already so much. And then, like, you know, then I'm like doing all this stuff over here, and like it is really just being anything in this world is so confusing.
I mean, going back with your film, like, which film festivals have you entered, and I'm like, or is this the only one? Or?
Yeah, I like legitimately only submitted to LAAPFF.
Yeah.
And I haven't submitted to any more, partially because money, and then also partially because I'm like, oh, like, I kind of want to kind of go energy into my like comedy web series and stuff that I'm doing. Like, I don't know if I want to keep on giving more life to this short film. Like maybe this will be it, and then I'll just kind of put it out there, and then like I'll like be grateful for the experience it was, and then move on. Or maybe if people like it, I might try to submit to more places. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah.
And you're graduating soon.
Yes, graduating next Friday,
Yay!
May 11th at 6 p.m. at Cal Arts up in Valencia. Come through if you want to.
Everyone can make it. Just go.
It's gonna be crazy.
Just random people in the stands just calling out your name.
Don't worry, I'll be there for you,
It's
Jeremy.
just,
I'll be there for you.
But it's like a big party, and like Cal Arts lets you wear whatever you want. So I'm gonna wear like a wrestling outfit, and then there's like free food, and they like the salsa band plays, and it's a big good
free
time.
food. I'm already there. Well, I just asked because I was like, I'm just wondering, and I guess you'll find out when it plays, like what's the reaction you've gotten, not just from like Filipinos, but from other hapas, from other like mixed background kids.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's funny. I actually showed it to my roommate and his girlfriend. And his girlfriend, he's Puerto Rican. His girlfriend is half Puerto Rican, half black. And then she actually, like afterwards, like was saying, like she almost cried watching it because she like related to stuff so much. And I was like, wow,
it's emotional. It is emotional watching it, and I don't know if it's like, I mean, like you're just so fabulous on screen. He's so handsome. Like, and I'm friends with Jeremy, and it's so super fascinating to see you transform into this character, to this person that I don't get to see very often, and I think that like seriousness that you bring to this film, like I was crushed for you, like in some scenes. I was like, that mofo, if he says one more thing, like I felt so like defensive,
Thanks,
in your honor. So yeah, I mean it's a great film. It's a great
Thank
film,
you,
guys.
thank you.
Nice. What would you say was like the most difficult thing making this short film?
Not having money, and then also I kind of forced myself to do things quicker than I wanted to because I was trying to make the HBO Visionaries deadline. I ended up not making the deadline because I got confused over Eastern time and Pacific time. But then,
damn time zones.
I know. I was like, HBO's LA. Why is it Eastern time? But yeah, just that stuff, and yeah, because I would have given the script more time to breathe. And like there are certain parts of the script where I'm like, yeah, I think that does what I want it to do in the way that I wanted it to do. And there are other moments where it's like, why did I have that in there? Or it's like too like so on the nose. I could have thought of like a more cinematic way. And like parts of the film almost feel like an essay more than like the film I would have made. It was just like, here's what so I think I said what I wanted to say. I just I didn't necessarily say it the way I wanted to say it because of the rush. But yeah.
What's the biggest thing that you learned throughout this process of making this film?
Honestly, I think just giving things like time till they're ready. Like, because I've been someone over this past few years, just like trying to like, I'm gonna grow, I'm gonna make things with my friends, and like we're gonna put it out, it'll be great, they'll see my genius, all that whatever. And then every time I put something out, I'm like, wow, that's the best I did this time, huh? Like, so it's like, I think the really, and I know Donald Glover says that too, like he doesn't put anything out before it's so ready. And that is, I think, the thing I learned the most. Like I was like Arlene was like almost going to be in the movie too at one point because there was like this role, and then I ended up realizing like I can't, like the time stuff, I can't do any SAG paperwork, so I like rewrote it to just be like a guy I knew who wasn't SAG. And then I was like, will the scene work? And actually it's like my favorite scene actually of the movie now. But yeah.
Nice. And speaking of friends, I think we have some mutual friends that's in your movie, like Caitlin and Stacy.
Yeah.
Fil-Am
Caitlin,
Creative members
Stacey,
out there
in the film, and they both do great work in it. And yeah.
Yeah, and just how did you, like, they're Fil-Am Creative members, like how did you get them involved, and what's your experience with Fil-Am Creative also?
My experience with Fil-Am Creative, I think I got involved last summer, and okay. So I was in a class, and then one of the guys in the class named Mark Fajardo, who never comes to these events.
Mark, where you at?
He invited me on Facebook to this. I'm burping. this and We Own the Eighth.
Yeah.
And so I, joined. I was like, oh, this is so cool. So I started going. And then I went to like the sketch writers group and met Caitlin and other people. And then when I was doing the film, I was like, okay, I need like resources to do this. And then initially, like I was just trying to have extras for the Filipino party. And then I asked Caitlin if she'd be down to do that. And then she was like, yeah, I'd be willing to if you like be an extra in my film. I was like, cool. But then my friend who I go to Cal Arts with, who was going to do the role, ended up not being able to do it. So I watched Caitlin's reel and saw how good she was at acting. And I was like, oh, can you actually do this? And then she's like, yeah. And then so she did it and it was great. And then Stacy, actually I was going to have Aina play my mom.
Aina Dumlao.
Yeah. And then it was going to be like a mom scene. But then she got a little too busy right before I was filming. So then I had like seen like Stacy. I saw her article she posted. That went kind of viral about being half and everything. And then I saw her comment on something in Fil-Am Creative. And then I was like, oh, cool. And I was like, oh, I can make it like an ate. And then she'll be my ate. And I was like, would you be down? And she's like, yeah. So then like it came together like that. And then it was, it was super awesome.
See, that's great. I mean, and that is the spirit of Fil-Am Creative, right? It's
Yeah,
just being
yeah,
able
yeah.
to network and putting everyone together and to make content like that, like
Yeah.
helping each other out.
Yeah.
We're gonna start wrapping it up, but before we go, do you want to tell the audience like
How can they find you?
how can they find you? When is your show?
Okay, the show is Saturday, this Saturday, and it's at 1:15, and it's part of like the Dislocated Self and Beyond program. Based on the order of things, I think mine is the first one, right at 1:15. I don't know, but it's somewhere in that program. And the theater is Googleable on the Los Angeles Asian website. And I guess finding me, like I'm Stupid Sounding Laugh on Instagram. I just made it private because I was like getting anxiety, but maybe I'll make it public again. And then I think on YouTube I have Stupid Sounding Laugh too, and I think Facebook and yeah.
And you want to pitch, share your series also?
Yeah. No, okay. The next project I'm working on, it's a web series called Fuck Boys, and I'll refer to it as F Boys here on out. And I eventually would like for it to be a sitcom that I like write and star in. But it's basically like me and my friend Ariane, who's like in the beginning and final scenes of Fakepino. And it's kind of what it kind of is like a silly sitcom inspired by like Workaholics and like It's Always Sunny and stuff, but of this kind of to us what we've discovered in college, this new incarnation of like the jock, where it's like these guys who are like pseudo spiritual and like wounded and like they're like trying to be in touch with things, but like but they're also such womanizers, and also they're like it's like just this weird kind of thing that's so funny to me. And then so it's like that's part of it. But also like me as like, being like half Filipino and him, he's like Indian. It's kind of exploring like what are these kind of subconscious desires to be more like a white man or like whiteness or like what we think women want, like the behaviors that we think will get us, the girls, versus like who we actually are. And then like this weird blending of like that right now with like hipster culture and LA culture and like Eastern spirituality and stuff.
Sounds interesting.
It sounds nuts, but like it's actually so simple when you like just watch it. But you'll see it soon. Like we're trying to do the first episode, like an 8-minute webisode within like the next month.
Okay,
and
cool.
then to the moon, baby. No.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for coming here.
No, thank you guys so much for it's been so fun.
Yeah, good luck. Good luck on the film, and hopefully you get into more film festival. Wish you the best. Thank you for coming here. When we come back, we'll be talking with Cath Gulick. And so here's going to be a word from our sponsors. And come back.
Stay golden, pony boy.
Awkward.
Okay, let's look over the charges. Assault, truancy, soliciting sex, illegal weapon, and threatening to burn down the school. The possible sentence of confinement for 1 year, possibly up to 3 or more years.
None of that's true. It's just stuff that people made up about me.
You sure about that? Why don't you tell me what happened?
Nothing happened.
Eleanor.
Welcome back to the mega podcast
Mega
of Fil-Am Creative, celebrating the
Los Angeles Asian Pacific Film Festival.
And we are here with a director, female director from Northern Philippines. No, I'm just kidding.
I was like, man.
We are here with Cath.
Cath Gulick.
Yes. Wow. I haven't heard my own name said correctly in years. It's
yes.
Shocking.
Yes.
Thank you.
Take that, Aaron. And she is the director of The Fever and the Fret.
Yes.
Which is going to be showing at the LA Asian Pacific Film Festival here in LA. And so welcome to Fil-Am Creative's Voices.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here.
I'm glad you could make it. She just flew in from New York and she came straight here. Look at her. Fabulous. You look great for someone who's...
That's a straight 6-hour flight, guys. I mean, like, most people would be like, no, I'm just going to sleep. And Cath is so gracious to join us, to do this segment. So thank you.
Yeah, it's midnight to you now, right?
Yeah, it is. But that's when I truly come alive.
There you go.
She's Batman. So, yeah, welcome. And please tell the audience what is your movie about?
My movie is The Fever and the Fret. And in case you're wondering why I'm here, I have a majority Filipino cast. And it's the story of a young girl who's in high school and she has a big birthmark across her face. And she's bullied because of the birthmark and then starts to sort of hallucinate another reality. And she's played by my good friend Adelina Mosco. And she's just my favorite actress. She's an amazing actress and she gives this amazing performance. And at the festival we were at in March, the Queen's World Film Festival, she won Best Actress.
Wow.
So I'm really, really excited for everyone to see Adelina, and I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome.
So do you know a lot of Filipinos in New York, or
do now?
Yeah.
I just start with one and then the rest.
Oh, you're like family already.
Well, yeah. Once they judge you, you're cool. Then all right. Well. Like, where did you grow up? Where are you from originally?
I am from this place called Ohio. Oh. Never wished to return there, but now I live in New York City.
Oh, very good.
That's why I only wear black. Even to baby showers.
Excellent.
And so tell us about your, like, how did you even come up with what was the concept for your film? How did you come up with this?
So I was looking for something for Adelina and myself to do because we had worked together before. We did an off Broadway play. It was a Greek tragedy, and she played one of those like Greek crazy people. So it's the Greek myth of Medea who kills her own children to get revenge on her husband. And Adelina sort of ripped it to shreds, and we were like, this was cool. Now let's do a movie. And we're like, great, let's do a movie. How much money do we have? We have $5. What are we gonna do? And we both had such big imaginations that we were trying really hard to think of something that we could shoot in New York City. So I was just sort of wandering around New York watching movies, and I watched this really crazy movie called Severed Ways, which some person shot about Vikings in his parents' backyard. And because the Vikings are just walking around in the woods, you're like, oh yeah, those are Vikings in the woods. And you don't really realize that it cost no money to make because it was so convincing. And so that made me realize that you just need a mindset of having a big world, and then you're only shooting a tiny sliver of it with the $5 that you have. So with that, Adelina and I were able to come up with this girl who's, her sense of reality is breaking down, and we're trying to get that across in the film and really give it an expansive sense of a universe beyond where she is, even though we're only showing you a sliver of what is happening.
Okay. Wow.
How long did it take you from when you guys came up with the idea to actually writing the script to filming?
It took a really, really, really long time. So we wrote it for about a year, and then because we both had these things called jobs, we were like shooting it on weekends, or like when we had saved up enough money to get a location, like at a school or a courtroom or park, New York City park. So we did that off and on weekends for 2 years. And for the dream sequences, this just sounds so absurd. I cannot believe we did this. We went to Iceland because it's really weird looking there.
Good excuse.
That's a really cheap $5 ticket.
Yeah. We went to Iceland and we lived out of a van.
Nice.
That's an amazing experience
It's
in
something
itself.
you do before you realize that it's weird. You're just like, of course, this is what.
But in the
we should
summer,
do.
was it in the
in
summer?
the summer?
Okay.
That's good.
So during the summer, it's like midnight sun. It's like permanent twilight for 8 hours every night. So that looks really weird, and we thought that would be a good place to hallucinate if you were having a mental breakdown.
And then how long were you guys in Iceland for?
We're in Iceland for 3 years. Not 3 years.
I was like, whoa.
3 weeks. But eventually we will be there for 3 years.
Excellent.
Wow. Was it one of those WoW flights too, or you could? How is that what you took?
Oh,
to Iceland.
A WoW flight.
Wow.
A WoW flight? I have not heard
The
of
airline.
WoW.
Oh, okay.
This is probably before the
Are,
WoW
are
flight.
those like advertisements for the super cheap flights that you?
Yeah, because I'm
take?
like, you had $5, so.
No, we went by bird. Just,
Yeah.
we did not go by bird.
The giant eagles in Lord of the Rings.
Yes, that's where they live. They live in Iceland.
So how did you come up with, like, what the hallucinations or the other realm that the character goes into? How did you come up with that specific concept?
That specific concept?
Mm-hmm.
Another movie that I saw at the time when I was really trying hard to think up a movie idea was it was the stop motion animation movie Coraline.
Oh yeah,
It's based on that
Yes!
weird comic
Oh
book.
my gosh!
And one of
the
the
other
things
mom.
yes, the other mother. It really reminded me of those fairy tales you read as a kid, where this child has a secret life, this other reality that they can go into. And I had wanted to do something along those lines, but again, didn't think I could build some other reality. But if she's hallucinating it, that is one way into that other place.
That is such a good movie, by the way.
It's really
it's
creepy
really
and good.
creepy,
Yeah.
but it's so fascinating. I
Yes.
watched it with Vincent, my son, who's 4.
Oh.
And like he was so scared of the other mom,
Oh.
and then like for a week he was like, "Do I have another mom?" And I'm like, "Excuse you, you do not."
She'd be like, I'm your mother.
The one with the button eyes. yeah,
Just
yeah,
go into
that's
the
really
room and
neat.
put on button
Oh my god, he would
Just freak 'em
I should do that. I'm gonna do that tomorrow.
When you grow up, Vin, sorry. I just want to say how awesome it is that that you're not Filipino, and then you're taking on this adventure to create one. I mean, it's you and your friend doing it, and it's to create a role, and it's to me personally, I think that's kind of daring, because I feel like a lot of people are afraid to do something like that, to write roles, that that are not non-white, or
How did you go about casting for the other roles?
For the other roles?
Mhm.
Well, first of all, Walter, thanks for saying that. I didn't realize I was like doing something that was unusual, because I was just so in love with my actress. And then for casting, we were casting it around her. So first her family members, and then the people who weren't her family members, there's like a teacher and a lawyer who could have been not Filipino, but it seemed kind of weird to like have them be not Filipino. It felt like they should be part of her community and participating in her story. So then we went like full on Filipino. It was really cool.
Did you write, or were you co-writing it with your friend, and like how did that come about?
I wrote just sort of a basic version for her, and then she kind of changed the details to make it fit the character's life in the community. So for instance, like I think in the original version she talked back to her grandmother.
Oh.
She does not do that in the movie.
She corrected, like, nope, not gonna happen.
So that got changed. Yeah. Things like that.
No, that's cool. And then once you guys completed the movie, what did you find interesting? Like, I mean, when you're trying to market this, being non-Filipino, like, what did you notice, and what did you see marketing a film about Filipinos or Filipino Americans?
We haven't quite seen that part yet because the actual obstacle of the movie is that it's so experimental that people are like, what the hell did I just watch? So if we could get past that, then maybe people will be confronting, the representation issue. But so far it's been the experimentalness of it. So it's been, what we've seen in festival feedback is that half the people will really love it, and like 5% of them will be like obsessed with it, and they're like, this is my favorite movie, which is such a fun reaction, right? Like to have people like really into the movie. And then the other half of the people who watch it are like, were you deliberately trying to confuse us? 'Cause we had that question at a festival. Someone raised their hand and said, I just want to know if you were deliberately trying to confuse us. So
I'm not gonna lie, the trailer, I was a little confused. I was like, I'm not sure what's going on, and then I was kind of, I was actually talking with Charles, and I was just like, I'm not sure what's going on with the character. Like, I feel like I need to know more of like it's enticing.
Okay.
It's really, really enticing because I kind of came up with like these different scenarios, like, was she kidnapped?
Okay.
Like is she, being enslaved somewhere? Like she's upset. I don't know what's going on. And so like my mind was just kind of like reaching, and then and so I'm really fascinated to see the rest of it, and to hear that the audience members either really love it, obsessed with it, or they get confused. Oh God, I can't wait.
Like, why are you confusing us?
Yes, we demand to know. Oh, so we have a special solution to that, which is that one of our biggest fans of the movie was an actor who was in it. His name is Ep5, and he played a bit part. It was really cool. He came in at the last moment to play a history teacher, and he sort of ad-libs this like history teacher thing. And when he saw the movie, he loved it, but he got it so intensely that he understands the movie better than I do. So when people are like, why was there this in that scene? He's like, it's because it means this other thing. And so he's going to come be the interpreter of the movie. He's going to be at the Q&A.
Oh, nice. Cool.
And if anybody has any questions, like, were you deliberately trying to convince us? Viet takes the mic and he can explain it to anybody.
It's a nice guy to have.
Yeah. We have a go-to explainer for the movie. That's how experimental it is.
Before the camera started rolling, we were kind of talking about festivals and how many you got your film into. Like, your response was so interesting to me that I feel like we should talk about it.
Share it, guys.
Yeah. So you got into LA Asian. Like, how many other festivals did you get into, and like what was that like?
Okay. So as I was telling Walter, we got rejected dozens of times for about a year, and then we got our first acceptance for the Queens World Film Festival in March. And then when we got into LA Asian, we were shocked because we thought it was kind of out of our league. So we're super thrilled to be here, and I just cannot wait for people to see the cast. And so many people from the cast are coming out. We have Adelina Mosco, Ivory Aquino, Kathleen Shango, Jenny Moon, Vanessa Carmona, and Viet Vo. All these actors are coming out to support the film. So we're super thrilled.
What's your advice for filmmakers who want to do more of experimental types of films, as far as like the process and reaching out to film festivals and everything?
I'm not sure, because I didn't intend to make an experimental film. I only learned that I made one when my new producer was, she was hyping the film. I hired her to get me through the festival process. And she was like, this daring experimental movie. And I was like, is it daring and experimental? Like, I didn't know that. But now that I know, my advice would be, you probably want to know how your audience is going to experience the film, so that the reactions that you get are the ones that you intend to get. So I did not intend to confuse half of my audience, but I'm very thrilled that 5% of them are obsessed with the film.
That's interesting. So would you say you think that's what may have kind of like stopped you from getting to certain film festivals before, and then
I'm sure
because the people viewing it was not matching up the description or log line that they're reading with the film they were
I think
seeing?
that could be some of it. I mean, the people who like the film, the log line in the description matches up for them. The people who don't get the film, it's just the two different things that don't make sense. So it's definitely not typical festival fare.
Wow. And I mean, so
That's huge that you got into LA Asian Pacific Film Festival.
like-
That's a huge feat, and it's amazing to
Yeah.
have that kind of opportunity.
Yes, cannot believe it. I do not even believe that I'm sitting here. I'm like, is this real?
No, and I mean, it's well deserved, and I think it's great that you guys came all the way out here from New York, and you guys are making things happen. And again, like even for your friend Adelina, like just creating content, just making things happen for herself, and you being a great friend helping around you, and everyone coming together. I think that's the spirit that we need to do with creating diversity and entertainment and things like that.
Definitely.
And like just for the people watching, like you could fail, you might get rejected by film festivals, but you keep trying, right? And you figure out what's not working. And
it's like film school at home. So
do you have any future projects coming up?
I'm writing a couple things with my friends, so we'll see how
Excellent.
they'll go. One of them is called Make Rome Great Again, and it's about how some well-meaning Roman citizens deal with the fact that their emperor is a psychopath with bad hair.
Oh.
I am judgy.
I'm just kidding. Does this Roman Empire have a bald head? Well, I'm glad that you could make it. Tell us more about the I just want to really quickly, if you could talk about to you, the one thing that you discovered about Filipino Americans or Filipino culture as you were making this.
Just one? Only one?
Okay, let's go with three.
Okay. So I didn't know anything about Filipino culture before I started hanging out with Adelina. I don't think I even know the Philippines was a country before I was hanging out with her.
Dang it, Ohio.
So no, just don't go. Never go to Ohio.
They skipped over that part of history.
They did. I learned about the Filipino American War from Shirley, who made sure that I knew. Tita Shirley, who played the grandma. So one thing I learned was how welcoming people were, because Adelina took me around the community in New York City so that I could get a better feel for what the backdrop of the movie would be. And so I was always welcomed, no matter how awkward I was, and no matter how vegan I was. People were there to welcome me. And I didn't know how talented people in the Filipino community are. We had, just walk-in auditions at different community centers around New York City. Most of the people, 98% were not professional actors, didn't have union cards, and they were just all blew us away, singing and acting. There's so much talent. And so I just felt like the luckiest director in the world to be able to pick from all these amazing people. And if I have to think of a third thing, I'll get back to you on the third thing.
All right. We'll follow up on that next time. Yeah.
Oh, quick question.
Yeah, go.
Favorite Filipino food?
Oh, halo halo.
Yeah, girl.
Well played. Have you been to the Philippines?
I have not been to the Philippines.
Ooh. Oh, well, I was vegan in the Philippines.
That might be a little tough.
I mean, there is a slight movement
in the bigger cities like Manila, right? Province-wise, that might be a little hard to come by.
It might be hard to come.
But
There's
Manila should be
there's
good.
a lot of rice.
Shirley says I need to stop eating rice. She was like, you need to lose weight, no more rice.
Oh, no.
It's really hard to give up rice, dude. If you're Filipino, it's really hard. I did it once and I lost 15 pounds. You'll drop weight like that.
Wow.
It's the portion control.
Okay.
You gotta just. But yeah, you definitely should go check out Philippines, visit it. Hopefully, I was telling her earlier, submit to the Philippine film festivals.
Yes.
You should just film in the Philippines when you go on vacation.
It'll be no problem because I can just move my actors there. And
There you go. I'm sure they know peoples.
Yes.
Yeah.
So before we wrap this up, can you tell the audience like where they can catch your show and what's your
Yes.
social media stuff?
Yes. So we are playing May 9th at it's called Regal LA Live. I haven't heard of that chain before. So May 9th at 7 p.m. at Regal LA Live. And we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, various versions of the title, The Fever and the Fret. I think it's like facebook.com/The Fever and the Fret. We have a website, thefeverandthefret.com. It's an interesting title. It's so artistic and so easy to remember. So
It sounds like a play, like a Shakespearean play.
it has a nice
It
range to
does,
it,
yeah. I dig it. Very good.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming and visiting Fil-Am Creative's Voices.
Thank you.
I'm glad you could just come here right after the airport. You're so
Like
awesome.
a boss, guys.
You
I
are a
mean,
trooper.
straight from the plane right here
We really
to
appreciate
historic
it.
Filipino town in Los Angeles.
Yeah. So, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Walter Talents.
And I'm Arlene Della Pena.
And you guys are watching Fil-Am Creative's Voices.
A big thank you to the cast and crew of this episode. Director Rodney Guhudo, producer and host Walter Towns, producer and host Arlene De La Pena, director of photography Winston Fernando, Cam Op and Sound Charles Gray, Cam Op BTS Ken Chan.